Hi, I'm Mike the Ente. Cardfight Vanguard is a game that I love, but it's very complicated and very hard to explain. So, I'm going to explain it over the course of multiple videos. In this video, I'm going to be using a couple of decks that I've created with mostly vanilla cards, so you can learn the rules of the game rather than dealing with specific cards' effects, for the standard format, also known as DivineZ or D for short. I'll just get right into it, and I'll explain things as I go. I built a deck of 54 cards. 4 cards go in the ride deck, plus 50 cards otherwise. You have to have 16 of these trigger cards. They've got the icons in the top right. I'll explain exactly what the ride deck is and what these trigger icons do when we reveal them into the game. So let's start playing. Now, each player has the deck of 50 cards. You set your 4 cards in the ride deck aside. The rest of the cards you shuffle. So I'm going to shuffle for my side. When I'm referring to my side, I'm going to be talking about the bottom half here. And then my opponent will shuffle, which you can see as the red icon, the shuffle icon turns red. When I'm talking about my opponent, I'm going to talk about everything that's happening in the top half. But I'll be playing as both people. You'll only see the cards in the bottom half because this is a 2v2 client thing. Don't worry about that part for now, honestly. Don't worry about that. So you start off the game by flipping a coin, heads or tails, to decide who goes first. The winner of the coin flip decides whether they want to go first or second. There are some advantages to going second, which I'll explain later. But for now, I'll just have myself go first. So you draw 5 cards, and then you can put as many of those cards back and redraw them, and then shuffle your deck again if you do. That's called a mulligan. If you don't know what to do, if you're just starting out, just put back all of the cards with the little trigger icons, because you'll want to wait to see those until later. So I'm going to put back this card because it has one of those icons, and then draw a 5th card again, and then shuffle my deck. It's very important that you draw the 5th card before you shuffle. You don't want to get back the card that you just decided was bad. And now my opponent's going to do the same. My opponent will draw 5. They'll put one back. Very cool. Alright. So, now that we have both done our mulligan, we stand up the Vanguard. We take the grade 0 card from our ride deck and put them on the blue Vanguard circle. The Vanguard is basically a representation of you as the player. You attack your opponent's Vanguard to deal damage to them and eventually defeat them in battle. And your Vanguard grows stronger from grades 0 to 1 to 2 and eventually to 3, allowing you to call stronger units and win the game or something. In any case, to start off your turn, you restand all your units. Go over that in just a bit more detail later. You draw a card. And then, because I haven't finished dealing with my ride deck yet, I discard any card from my hand to ride the next grade up. So I'll go from a grade 0 to a grade 1 by discarding Knight of Calming Silence, whatever her name is. And this is a new aspect of the DivineZ format. Whenever you ride from grade 0 to grade 1, you get this thing called the Energy Generator Crest. Technically, they've teased that you might have more ride deck crests in the game, but for now, this is the only one that you have. So everyone gets it. You get the energy generator, and it says if it's part of your ride deck, when you ride, put this card into the crest zone, and if you went second, energy charge 3. I'll explain energy when it becomes relevant. For now, though, there's nothing else that I can really do on my turn, so I will pass. Alright, my opponent will now begin their turn. They will stand and draw. They will discard a card to ride. Now, if I can hover over this grade 0 here, both of our grade 0s actually, say, when this unit is rode upon, if you went second, draw a card. So basically, as a bonus for going second, my opponent gets to draw one. So, they ride, and then they get to draw, and then they'll get the energy crest. And then, if I can highlight over the energy crest again, they get to energy charge 3. And now you can add 3 at once by going to the ride phase, because the energy crest says once it's in play, you get energy charge 3 at the start of your ride phase, which means before you ride the Vanguard. That's why I have 0 energy and my opponent has 3, but basically we'll each be getting 3 energy at the beginning of our turns. Now then, my opponent drew for going second. My opponent's Vanguard, Awakening from Slumber Roroa, also has a skill. It says when it's placed by riding on Bioroid Youth Roroa, which is their grade 0, you can call up to 1 plant to the back row center rear guard. Ka-chow. The Vanguard circle, of course, is you. And the rearguard circles, the 5 surrounding your Vanguard circle, are basically your allies. If they're in the back row, they can boost your Vanguard and help you deal damage to your opponent. In any case, for now my opponent is going to enter the battle phase. The 3 center columns each have 1 attack normally. The units in your front row can attack, and the units in the back row can boost. Right now, my opponent will attack with Awakening from Slumber Rorwa, boosted by their plant token. When you boost a unit, you add their power to yours, so my opponent will have their Vanguard of 8,000 power, and their plant token of 5,000 power, combined to make 13. That's more than 8, or equal to 8, so if this attack goes through, I'll take a damage. I'm going to let this attack go through, because I'll explain blocking later, and I don't want to explain blocking right now. Whenever the Vanguard attacks, you perform a drive check. So you reveal the top card of your deck and add it to your hand. My opponent just revealed For One's Precious Thing Rorwa. Very cool. The drive check is where triggers come into play. I'll talk more about those later. Though triggers can also happen on damage checks, which I'm about to perform right now. Similarly to a drive check, whenever your Vanguard takes a hit, you flip over the top card of your deck and reveal it, and then it goes into the damage zone, face up. Sounds pretty simple, right? I hope so, because it's the end of my opponent's turn. Also, it should be noted, in case it hasn't been implied yet by me not attacking, the player who goes first cannot attack. Also, in order to attack, you have to rest your units, i.e. change their position from upright to on the side. Hence the whole stand and draw thing. You stand your units by putting them back into this standing position, and then the rest of the position. Very cool. In any case, I stand and draw. Well, I don't stand because my units are already stood, but it's called the stand phase anyway. Stand and draw, and then at the beginning of ride phase, I energy charge 3. A lot of people on this online simulator, they'll just go right into ride phase, so you'll get 3 before you draw, but technically you get it after you draw. It's not relevant in any situation that I know of, but that's beside the point. Let's start playing the game. I will discard 1 to draw, or discard 1 to ride. However, my Knight of Heavenly Lasting Tranquilla says when this unit is rode upon, reveal 3 cards with different grades from hand. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Choose up to 1 grade 1 or less unit card from among them. Call it to any rearguard circle and shuffle the deck. And then if you didn't call a card, you may call this card, i.e. Tranquilla, to the rearguard circle. So let's ride. I'll reveal 3 cards with different grades from my hand. There's a 1, there's a 2, there's a 3. You can see the 1, 2, and 3 in the top left of the card themselves. You can only call cards normally from your hand that are the same grade or less as your Vanguard. In any case, I revealed 3. I'm going to look at the top 5. And then I get to choose a grade 1 or less card, so I could choose a grade 0. But I'll call it to the rearguard circle. I'll call this one behind my Vanguard for now. And then shuffle the deck. Very cool. Now I'm technically in the main phase. Now then, let's talk about calling cards again. Because I'm grade 2, I can call grade 2s or grade 1s from my hand. And I can also play grade 2 orders, or grade 1 orders, or grade 0 orders technically. For now, let's actually play one of these orders. Order cards are like supporter cards in Pokemon, or, well, they're kind of like a mix of spells and monsters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because you can only play 1 per turn. And they usually have pretty strong effects. So they're really just like supporters in Pokemon. So, in order to play Wisdom of Beginning That Cleared the World, I have to be grade 2, which I am. And I will play it with Counterblast 1. What the heck is the Counterblast? Well then, if you recall that I took this damage and put it into the damage zone face up. Turning a damage face down is called counterblasting. If you have a face down damage and turn it back face up, that would be countercharging. Your damage is not just a way for your opponent to win the game, it is also a resource. But beware, if you get to 6 damage, you lose the game. So you want to make sure that you have enough counterblast, or enough damage to use your abilities and effects, but you don't want to take so much that you risk dying. And there is risk, which I'll get into when that comes up. For now, Wisdom of Beginning That Cleared the World is a very good normal order card. Counterblast 1, you draw 2 cards, and then choose 2 cards from your hand, call each of them with grade less than or equal to your Vanguard to RC, to the rearguard circle, and discard them if not. So basically, I get to call 2 units like I normally would. It's important to note that a lot of these effects are stating specific grades because, normally speaking, if you superior call, i.e. call a card by an effect, it doesn't actually matter what the grade of the card is. But, of course, a lot of these cards are specifying, no, it actually does have to be less than or equal to your Vanguard, because otherwise it would be a little too overpowered. In any case, I have plenty of cards that I can call, so I'll call 1 and 2 cards from my hand to the rearguard circle. Alrighty then. And I'll also put another Lysana in the back. I should note that once you call a card to the rearguard circle, you can swap them within the same column as much as you'd like, and you can move them forward and back within the same column. But you cannot move them between columns like this. Moving a card from one column to another is not okay. Alright, so let's start attacking again. I will boost my Vanguard with Shadow Bow Archer Lysana. I have 18,000 power and my opponent's Vanguard is only at 8. And let's just say my opponent will let this attack go through. I'll perform a single drive check. I get a heal trigger. Now this is where those trigger markings come in. Whenever you hit a trigger, you get to give 10,000 power to any unit of your choice, plus, depending on which kind of trigger, you get an additional effect to go off. Since I performed a heal trigger, I give 10,000 power to any of my units. I'll give it to this Knight of Parting's Leogar. And, because I have the same amount of damage or more than my opponent, I get to put a card from the damage zone into the drop zone. I.e., I get to discard it, it goes to the graveyard, whatever you call it. So now I go from 1 damage to 0, which is really nice. Alright, my opponent now takes a damage check. My opponent reveals for one's precious thing in the damage check as well. He's revealing a lot of those lately. Alright, very cool. Now then, I will attack with Leogar boosted by Lysana. My opponent is at 8,000, I am at 18,000. My opponent will again decide to take this hit. And again, they take a damage check, and there's no trigger there, so it doesn't really matter what it is. Now, Knight of Parting's Leogar will attack their Vanguard. 20,000 power versus 18,000. And we'll just say that my opponent will take the damage again. No trigger. Oh my gosh. My opponent's getting very unlucky. Triggers work on defense, by the way. If you damage check a heal trigger, you can heal a damage apart from the heal trigger itself. Because technically the trigger will go into this place called the trigger check zone. So when you check a trigger, it's not in the damage zone yet. So if a heal trigger is your first damage, you wouldn't heal it. But he would be able to give 10,000 power to his Vanguard, and maybe it'd be easier for him to block my attacks. We still haven't seen any blocks happen yet. We'll see those soon enough. My opponent will draw, or my opponent will stand and draw. Notice how his cards turn right side up now. And my opponent will discard to ride. And now look at my opponent's new Vanguard, the World 3,000 Years Later Roroa. When Grade 2 Roroa is placed on the Vanguard circle, he'll retire one of his rear guards and call 2 plant tokens to the rear guard circle. Very cool. Going into the main phase, now he will call Regritter Girl of Flame Blossoms Radalina. This is going to be the first unit that has an actual ability. She has an act ability, which means that she can activate it whenever my opponent wants. And it says if you do not have a Momoke token, counterblast 1 and call a Momoke token to the rearguard circle. Tokens are found outside of the traditional deck. You've probably realized that my opponent has called those plant tokens just with the effect of his Vanguard, not from his hand or anywhere else. My opponent generates a Momoke and calls it to the rearguard circle. Momoke has an interesting ability. 2 interesting abilities, actually. He can retire your other rear guards and give Momoke 5,000 power until the end of the turn for each rear guard you retire. And also, if he has a Radalina in the same column, and if his Vanguard is Roroa, Momoke can attack from the back row. It's really nice. Probably, well, I said it earlier, that normally only the front row units can attack. So you're typically given up to 3 attacks in one turn. However, attacking from the back row means 4 attacks, and that could mean 4 damage, or even more depending on the circumstances. In any case, my opponent is going to play down a trigger card, Cheery Support Elf. For reasons I'll get into probably sooner rather than later, it's usually not wise to call these triggers down. However, my opponent has an order of their own, called Blessing to the Flowering Buds. Until the end of the turn, all of my opponent's units with the original power of 5,000 or less get 10,000 power, and they get an ability that says if the unit's attack hits, they can return it to their hand. Note that both the heal trigger, the heal trigger and all of the tokens have original power of 5,000, as seen on the bottom of that card. So 10,000 to Momoke, 10,000 to each plant, and 10,000 to the heal trigger. And of course, if the heal trigger's attack hits, my opponent gets to return it to their hand. Alright, my opponents will go into their battle phase now and start attacking. Once you go into the battle phase, you can't call any more rear guard from hand, unless there's an ability that says so. Alright, my opponent will attack with the heal trigger first. This is a 30,000 power attack against my 10,000 power. Now, I know 4 attacks are coming, so there's plenty of opportunity for me to hit a damage trigger. I can't guard this attack very easily either, so I might as well just take it. I'll take the hit, and for a trigger check. No trigger. That's very unfortunate. Now then, my opponent has the inherited ability. Blessing of the Flowering Buds allows him to return that heal trigger to his hand, and so he will. Next, my opponent will attack my Vanguard with Roroa. That's 25,000 power against my 10,000. That's still quite a lot, so I think I'm just going to take this one for now. My opponent's drive check is another heal trigger. Oh gosh. Since the Vanguard's attack is going through anyway, he's going to give that 10,000 power to Momoke, and then he will heal a damage. Might as well heal the face down one because it's not going to be turned face up anytime soon. He can use the other face up damages for counter blasts. Alright, now it's time for me to take a damage check. I get a critical trigger. That's pretty nice. I'll give the 10,000 power to my Vanguard, and normally a critical trigger, well, I guess it technically still happens anyway. A critical trigger will give one of your units an extra critical, which basically means that when their attack hits a Vanguard, they'll deal 2 damage instead of 1. Of course, this is not very useful on defense, but it technically still happens, so I'm going to notify you of it anyway. Now, it is worth noting that, let's say your Vanguard's attack is already hitting and you get a critical trigger, you can give the critical to your Vanguard and then the 10,000 power to a different unit. You don't have to give the effects to the same unit. Alright. Now then, my opponent will attack from the back row with Momoke. Attacking my Vanguard, it's 25,000 versus 20. Now I'm going to reveal a cool ability that grade 2s have. Pretty much all grade 2s have this. You might notice that grade 1s have this little symbol up top. Grade 0s have it as well. This 3 arrow symbol is called the boost symbol. It's what allows these grade 1s to add their power from the back row to the front row. Grade 2s don't have this symbol, neither do grade 3s. You may have noticed that I have a grade 2 that I didn't call from my hand to this back row circle. That's because it would have been useless there. It can't boost and it can't attack from there, so there's no need for me to play it. However, grade 2s do have a slightly different symbol. This is the intercept symbol. And grade 2s that are in the front row can move from the rearguard circle to the guardian circle and intercept. Now, they will get retired, i.e. moved to the discard pile, at the end of this blocking step. However, any cards in the guardian circle have their shield value, notice this number on the left, different from power, added to my power value. And if the shield value is greater than if the shield plus power is greater than the attacking power of my opponent, the attack doesn't go through at all. If they match, Momoke's attack will still go through. So I have to intercept with both of them. 30,000 power eats out 25, so I don't take any damage. However, my opponent, as you probably know now, is far from done. Radalina attacks, and Radalina has a second ability as well. Because my opponent has Roroa as a Vanguard, and a Momoke in the same column, my opponent can Soul Blast to add Momoke's power to her. What the heck is a Soul Blast? Well, you've probably realized that we've been riding by placing cards on top of each other this entire time. Everything beneath the Vanguard is known as the Soul. You can see here that my opponent has 2 Soul, and so do I. So, my opponent is going to Soul Blast, i.e. get rid of one of the cards in his soul, to activate Radalina's ability. Since Momoke has 25,000 power, Momoke's power gets added to Radalina, and now it is 35 versus 20. That's a lot. I would rather not take that damage. And this is a little bit of a suboptimal play, but I'm going to do it just to explain a few things. I'm going to call cards from my hand to the Guardian Circle to block. Ka-chow, 40,000 power. Note that this shield trigger has 15,000 shield instead of the usual 5. Most normal units, the ones you want to be attacking with, have only 5,000 shield. So it's not wise to call triggers down because they have low power, 5,000, and high shield. And they can't intercept because most triggers are grade 0s. Grade 2, I called it from the hand to the Guardian Circle. Just as 5,000 shield, but I needed to get over 35. But of course, my opponent had that crazy order card, if I can look through it, that allowed him to return his heal trigger to his hand, never punished. That's just a little bit of the strategy involved with deck building. You have to build your deck to have all of their effects synergize with each other so you can do what you want to do. In the real meta, as you can imagine by this whole 4 attacks on turn 2 business, Rorwa likes to deal a lot of damage very early and just pressure you into the late game. In any case, my opponent is done attacking now, so I will stand and I will draw. And I'm just realizing now that I'm kind of even more dumb than I realized, because now I don't even have 3 grades in hand to reveal for this Clear Sky Knight's ability. But hey, that's just how it works sometimes. Sometimes you just don't have the resources necessary to activate your abilities. That's part of the fun of Vanguard, is the resource management. So I'll discard Knight of Calming Silence for now, and I will ride Sword that connects Heaven and Earth Alden. Alden has a skill. Once per turn, I can Counterblast and Soul Blast to call a grade 3 or less card from my hand to the rearguard circle. So let's do that now. We'll call it, and then Counterblast, Soul Blast, and then I draw 2 cards. Drawing cards in this game is a lot rarer than in other games because you simply have fewer ways to do it. Because if you could draw into all of your triggers or all of your units, that'd just be really good. Hand advantage is very powerful. You use your cards for everything in this game, and so the game doesn't want you to have 20 cards in your hand at any time. I've had like 13 before, but that's very rare. In any case, I will call another Gigantic Assailer just by calling it normally from my hand, and then I'll start battling. Alrighty then. I'm going to... How exactly do I want to do more different regional grades? Oh. Wow, I forgot my own Vanguard's ability. Sure. Let's pretend that I didn't enter the battle phase, actually. But let's, normally you're not allowed to return a card, from your rearguard circle to your hand, unless an ability says so, but we're just gonna take that back for the purposes of learning the game, I guess. Oh my gosh, this is train wreck already, I see. Alright, battle phase. Let's attack with Gigantic Assailer. Now, normally I would attack the Vanguard here, 13 versus 10. Actually, I might as well anyway. Yeah, I'll just attack the Vanguard. When this unit attacks, if you have a unit with Alden in his card name, which I do, he's my Vanguard, Soul Charge 1, and if a trigger unit was Soul Charged, this unit gets 10,000 power until the end of the battle. Soul Charging is adding the top card of your deck to the Soul. There's a Soul Charge button in this little game here, but so you know, I'm adding the top card of the deck to the Soul. And I Soul Charge a trigger unit. I Soul Charge my OT, which is a card that you don't want to Soul Charge, to say the least. But hey, I get 10,000 power on my Gigantic Assailer, and now I'm attacking for 23,000. That's pretty good, but my opponent's just going to block that for 25,000 because he has a heal trigger, which, fair enough. That can happen. Alright, now then, Alden will attack the Vanguard. Alden has an ability that says if I have 3 or more rearguards with different original grades, Gigantic Assailer is a grade 3, Leo is grade 2, and Lisanna is grade 1, I can Soul Blast 1. I can choose one of my rear guards and return it to my hand, so I will. And then I could choose up to 2 cards with the total sum of their grades being less than or equal to the original grade of the card returned to my hand from my hand. So basically, I can call up to 2 from hand with grades equal than or less to 3, which means that I will not be able to call 2. I can only call 1. I'll just call the same guy again. And yeah, that happens. So I'll attack my opponent's Vanguard for 21k. And my opponent will actually not guard this. It's not that strong of an attack, but you might notice, similarly to grade 1 and 0's boost and grade 2's intercept, this grade 3 card has a double arrow icon. And it also has a crazy crown icon. I'll get to that later. Grade 3s have an ability called Twin Drive. When they attack as the Vanguard, they get to perform 2 drive checks instead of 1. That's pretty good. Check 1, no trigger. Check 2, though, also no trigger. Still, my opponent does take a damage. No trigger there either. And we continue attacking. 13,000 to my opponent's Vanguard, Soul Charge, and another trigger unit was Soul Charged. Oh, nice. There was some lag there. That's fun. That Resolute Pair of Eyes was from the Vanguard's attack. But in any case, I Soul Charge a trigger unit, so I get 10,000 power to Gigantic Assailer. And now it is 23 versus 10 again. My opponent is going to, we'll say that he guards it. Sure. 25 to 23, blocks it. And then 18,000 power to my opponent's Vanguard. We'll say my opponent blocks with 1 and 2 from the hand. Very cool. I must end my turn. My opponent stands and draws, and will discard to ride. Alright, now my opponent is at 9 energy. The energy generator crest does have a little ability of its own. Once per turn, you can energy blast 7 and draw a card, so that will be removing 7 energies from how much energy you have. If my game will update. Very cool. And my opponent will draw a card. Nice. Alright. Now my opponent is going to have Momoke use that special ability of his. He's going to retire 2 of these plants and gain 10,000 power for the turn. And then Rorowa, grade 3 Rorowa, is going to use his ability. He can Soul Blast 1 and call up to 3 plant tokens to the rearguard circle, making up for the fact that Momoke just retired a bunch of them. So 1, 2, and 3. Very cool. Alrighty then. Now my opponent goes into the battle phase. My opponent will attack my Vanguard with his. 18,000 power to my 13. I don't have a lot that I can do to block this. I could intercept, and I could play this perfect guard, but I don't really want to do that. Not on an 18,000 power attack. So we're just going to let this one pass through, honestly. Opponent will do 1 drive check, and a second. A critical trigger. Power will go to Momoke, and my opponent's Vanguard is now dealing 2 damage instead of 1. Alright, now it's time for my damage checks. 1, no trigger, and 2, no trigger. My gosh. Alrighty then. Now it's time for some more strategy talk. My opponent's plant tokens are only dealing 10,000 power. My Vanguard is 13, so why not attack the rear guard? You can attack either of the front row rear guards as well as the Vanguard. You have to choose only one to attack in most circumstances. And if an attack hits a rear guard like this, the rear guard retires. You don't take any damage though. Pretty simple stuff, I hope. Alright. Momoke will attack my Vanguard for 25,000 power. That's a lot, and I can't do much to block it, so I won't block it. No trigger again. That's great. Now then, Radalina will attack, Soul Blasting to give herself 25,000 power, equal to Momoke's. Now that's a big attack, and I am at 5 damage. If I go to 6, I lose the game. So, let's not lose the game. I'm going to play this Sentinel card, Life-Saving Angel Karabiel. When it's put on the Guardian Circle, instead of having any shield power itself, I discard a different card from my hand, and I completely nullify the attack, no matter how big the power is. Even if it's 100 million, it does not go through. So, my opponent now ends their turn with 0 soul. They won't be able to use Radalina as easily now, fortunately for me. I stand, and I draw, and I drew a Persona Ride. Time to talk about that crown icon. Whenever you have a... Well, okay. Once you're done riding from the ride deck, you can't ride from the ride deck anymore. However, you can still ride from your hand. And if you ride a card with the same name as your current Vanguard, your front row gains 10,000 power for the turn, as you can see by the game automatically doing that, and you get to draw an additional card. It's known as Persona Ride, and it's very useful. Alright, main phase. I'll use that Energy Generator Crest thing to Energy Blast 7 and draw 1. And... I have a choice of sorts to make. Let's use Alden's skill. Counter Blast 1 and Soul Blast 1. And I will choose a Grade 3 or less and call it, and then draw 2. Very cool. Now, I could play this Wisdom of Beginning that cleared the World Order, but I would have to call over cards that already exist, so I wouldn't really be getting to draw 2 cards. That wouldn't be as good. My board's already pretty much full. I would draw 2, but then I'd have to call 2. I could only really call 1, and if I don't get a Grade 1, then what's the point? Alright. Let's start attacking, I suppose. This time, Gigantech Assailer will attack Roro for 23,000 power. That's pretty big. But, oh wait, also, I Soul Charge 1, and then was the trigger unit Soul Charged? It was. Alright, that's 33,000 power now. My opponent is not going to block that. Let's hope for a defensive trigger. No trigger there. Alrighty then. Aldid will attack the Vanguard again. We Soul Blast 1. We return Gigantic Assailer to hand, and I'll call it back down. Now, I could call this Aromas this trigger unit because 3 plus 0 is still 3, but we're not going to do that because of the reasons that I mentioned earlier. You don't want to commit trigger cards to the board. 31,000 to the Vanguard, that's pretty big. My opponent will block with 2 triggers, which brings their total defense, I guess, from 13 to 43, because each of these triggers is 15,000 shield. This is what we in the community call a 2 to pass. If I get 2 triggers on this drive check and give all of the effects to my Vanguard, I will be able to attack through the defense. But if I only get 1 trigger, it's not going to do anything, because I'll just be at 41 versus 43. 2 to passes are pretty powerful because you can goad your opponent into giving power where they shouldn't. So that's fun. Drive check 1. Speak of the Devil. It is a heal trigger. I will get to heal. And do I want to give the power to my Vanguard? Yes, because it's fun. It's usually not optimal to do this, but if it's going to win you the game, it's going to win you the game. Check 2. Critical trigger. Okay, I guess I won't get to explain everything. I will give power and critical to the Vanguard. And now my opponent takes 2 damage, potentially losing them the game. Front trigger my opponent gets. So now my opponent gets power to the whole front row instead of just 1 unit. It automatically gets applied, so you can see Radalina and the plant and Rorwa got that boost. These cards should be gone. Come on, game. Thank you. And check 2. If this isn't a heal trigger or the OT, then my opponent loses. It is not. Very cool. However, there are some things that I want to explain, so let's just pretend that my opponent has an ability that lets him live on 7 damage or something. Okay? Okay. Because I still want to show off some things. Alright. 23,000 power. Let's attack Radalina here. Because if I attacked Vanguard, he could just intercept with Radalina anyway. So let's not give him that option. Radalina will die. Cool. And now we'll attack Vanguard for 31,000 power. Vanguard's only at 23, but Rorwa does have a defensive ability. It's good to note that some Vanguards or some rear guards have defensive abilities. When this unit is attacked, you can retire some of your token units, sort of like intercepting, but you can retire them from the back row as well, and he'll get 5,000 power until the end of that battle. So I'm attacking for 31k. He just needs to retire 2, and his power temporarily goes up to 33k, and now he's okay. He's all set. Alright, I will end my turn. My opponent will theoretically begin his turn. Stand and draw. He will Persona Ride as well. He draws a card. Say he Soul Blast 1 to make 3 more plants. I want to hit I want to see a couple certain cards here, to be honest. There are some things that I really want to show off. Battle phase, 28,000 power to my Vanguard. Let's go for Let's go 28, 43,000, 2 to pass. Let's see it happen. Check 1, critical trigger. Let's just say my opponent goes for the funny move, gives all effects to the Vanguard. Check 2 is a front trigger. Love to see it. That's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to put the heal trigger in damage zone. My apologies. 48 beats 43, so theoretically I take 1 damage and 2. Now I'm at 6 damage. Now I would have lost the game. But let's just keep going. Plant token attacks for 30,000 power. Attacking the Vanguard. Let's actually go with... Well, see now, again, let's just say theoretically that I could have unlimited damage. And like if I lost at 8 cards or something. This plant token column is 30,000. This other plant token column is also going to be 30,000. So I might as well take the damage now and hope that I get a trigger, because I can't actually block both attacks. I don't block both attacks. Awesome. All right, don't get a trigger. Whatever. Other plant column it's column. Other plant column attacks for 30,000. I'm going to play a Blitz Order. Blitz Orders are cards that can be played during your opponent's turn. They're kind of only available to be used as Guardians. So I play the Blitz Order, I pay the cost, which is discarding another card from my hand, and then I choose one of my units being attacked, and it gets 5,000 power until the end of the battle. Note that it says 18,000 instead of 13 here. And then choose the 4 heal triggers from your drop and call them into the Guardian Circle, which basically means I get to have a bunch of guarding power. Look at how much I'm guarding by. That's great. 63,000. That's definitely enough. Of course, the game is already over, but don't worry about it. Opponent ends their turn. I stand and I draw. I will Persona Ride yet again. Whoop-de-doo. That's amazing. Now, I might as well use all of this Counter Blast and Soul Blast to call a card and draw 2, even though it's a trigger unit, whatever. Battle phase, 23,000. Gigantic Assailer, Soul Charges. It was another trigger unit for some reason. Why not at this point? 33k. Vanguard blocks, and then we'll use the skill, retire 2 plants to make it 38k, so the attack doesn't go through. Amazing. I attack. I get the Soul Blast 1. I get the bring Gigantic back to hand and then call it back down. 31k to the 13. 28, 33. So now it is 2 to pass. Check 1, no trigger. Check 2 is a front trigger, but I still don't pass. The 43 beats. Wait. Oh, because I Persona Rode. That's right. I forgot about my own Persona Ride. I did the math wrong. It was 23 plus 8. It was 31, which went up to 41. Anyway, opponent takes damage. Very cool. 38 to the 13. Let's say opponent takes this one. And then 41 to 13. We're going to go with playing a perfect guard down. Discard 1 from hand. The attack is nullified. As if that matters at this point. Stand, draw. We're not riding, but my opponent's going to use that energy blast thing. Going to draw a card. Can't Soul Blast to make plant tokens. So he's going to move this plant token up. See, remember what I said about moving? This might be relevant, because if he gets a trigger, then he can put it on that plant token and make it powerful enough to deal some damage. Alright, opponent attacks me for 18,000 power. I will go 28, 43, 2 to pass now. Check 1, check 2. Come on, I want to see him hit the funny trigger. There's a certain trigger card that Wait, I haven't even gone over draw triggers yet. I keep soul charging them. You know what? I'm going to stack the deck. I'm going to... Okay. We're just going to go stand, draw. Don't even care about anything else. Let's just... do I even have a draw trigger in here? Yes, I do. Okay. We're going to put this one on top. Okay. Just so I can show off what a draw trigger does. If you hit a draw trigger, you get 10,000 power, you give it to someone, and then you get to draw a card. It also works on defense. So if I were to damage check it, let's just put that on the top. Hold on. I have to... This game will check to see if your opponent is in battle phase. If I damage check a draw trigger, then I can give the power to someone and I get the draw. Just so you know what a draw trigger does. Oh no, we didn't even go over set orders. Oh, there's so much to do. There's so much more to teach. Let's just theoretically say that my opponent drew one of his set orders at some point. It's gonna add that from the deck to the hand. So my opponent will play a set order. Resolute Pair of Eyes. He'll counterblast and retire. Yeah, it's loaded. Okay. Counterblast and retire rearguard. He searches for the deck. But the key is, once you play a set order, they stay in play forever, and a lot of them have continuous effects. For instance, this one gives us back row tokens, so plant tokens and Momoke, 5,000 power, and it stacks. So if you get a bunch of these Resolute Pair of Eyes orders in play, your back row becomes very big, which means big Momoke, which means you win the game. Alright, secondly, let's say it's battle phase time, right? My opponent will put a mysterious card on top of the deck so I can show it off. And let's say that I guard for like a bunch of power, right? My opponent's attacking me. Oh no, I want to protect myself. Oh no, 38 power. You can't pass this because, you know, 13 plus 20 is only 33k. No. Over trigger. My opponent gives 100 million power to any unit of his choice and draws a card and removes the over trigger from the game. That's why it's way over here. Also, each nation has an OT with a specific extra effect. If you drive check it, you get to do even more cool things. So, Blessed Favor says he gets to draw an extra card. He gets to give a critical to any unit. He gets to heal a damage from his damage zone. He gets to give 10,000 power to his entire front row. Yeah, the over trigger is overpowered. It is called that for a reason. By the way, over triggers also work on damage. Let's say theoretically that I'm gonna put this on top of the deck. Let's say that my opponent had a really good combo going, and let's say that he was gonna try to like destroy me or something. He's got like, oh, let's say he's got like, oh, his war was at 100,000 power. If I check my over trigger, I don't care. I don't take the damage. I give 100 million power to my Vanguard. I draw the card, and then he doesn't do anything for like the rest of the game, basically. It's certainly something. That's Vanguard. See you in the next lesson, I guess.